Hi, guys. Do we have everybody in? I'm going to unmute everybody. Hi, everybody. Welcome.
Hi, Kristen.
Hi, Brooke. And we've got, let's see, I've got Mike and Karen there.
Yes.
Hi, welcome. And we've got an iPad who's someone trying to be incognito.
There it is. It's Joel.
Oh, hey, Joel. We've got, does Shara in there? Let me see, unmute all. We've got Monica and let's see, who else do we have in here? We've got Shara. Well, you guys, welcome. And everybody drinking the wine. Hi, everybody. Hi. What we're gonna do is we're just gonna have like a 5-minute chat here while people are joining, and you guys can, and then we'll go ahead and mute your microphones, and then I'll teach a little bit about the class, a little bit about the area, the wine, and then you guys, while we're doing the class, while I'm teaching it, Penny, will you say hi?
Hello, everybody. I think I know a couple of the people, but some new faces.
So this is Penny Freites, and she is going to be moderating the class, and we'll be watching the chat box for questions that you have. So as soon as I finish wrapping up about the white wine and that, I'll say, okay, Penny, are there any questions in the chat box that I should be answering? Penny's gonna go ahead and keep track of those, and then she'll let me know about those questions in the chat box. After that, we'll go into the red, talk about that. I'll go through that a little bit. Again, your microphones will be on mute this whole time. And then at the end, after we're finished with the 2 wines, we'll go through any of the chat box questions that Penny has. And at that point, we will open it up for anybody to unmute their microphone and ask a live question at that point, if you've got one. And if not, we'll just be saying goodbye and seeing you guys next week. Does that make sense to everybody on the call? Does everybody thumbs up? And there's a little thing down here that's called reactions at the bottom, and you can put a thumbs up. I'll do a thumbs up with my face, so you can see perhaps thumbs up, so that we know that you're all okay. But yay, look at all those thumbs up, yay. Let's see, that will be our plan for this time, and then if it doesn't work so well, we'll make a change for next week. As you guys have been learning, there's just a lot of change that goes on through all this. Before I mute you guys, does anybody have any questions that they want to ask right now that I haven't made clear about this little experience? All right, I'm going to go ahead and I'll mute everybody. And all right, well, welcome. And it has been really fun. So through this, when I bought the wines and delivered them to, I think, almost everybody on this call, I was really excited to get them into my house and open them, because I hadn't had either of these wines in a while, and I love these wines. And so I immediately, that night, we were having some Indian food that I'd made. I'd actually made it a while ago, and then I was defrosting it, and it's so great with the coconut milk, and it's got some spice and some heat in it. So I was like, well, this wine is going to be perfect for that pairing. And I enjoyed it that night and have enjoyed it. That was Wednesday night. I've still got, I'm pretty proud of myself. Like, I've still got that much left in the bottle, which is for me pretty good. So we're going to start with the white tonight. And so if you'll grab that, I've got my glass poured. So cheers, everybody, to our first Sip with a Somm class with everybody on the call. And cheers to this. And oh, Penny's got some water. All right, cheers. Okay. So I want to just do a quick overview of Italian wine to start with. And it is really one of the most complex concepts and locations to look at in the world in terms of wine production. And when you look at a map, I'll show you, I love this book by Jancis Robinson and Hugh Johnson. But you can see, this is the map of Italy. And we are talking about a very small country that is filled with tons and tons and tons of wine. And the country itself has been such a fractured country, not only because of the politics, but also because of the mountain ranges and the areas that keep everybody on their own. We end up with an area that is so hard to study because just over the mountain range, they may have the same grape planted, but both regions call it something different. And then you add to that the producers. When the Italian wine industry started, and when there was these little producers, all these little guys in Italy, generally they sent their wine to market, to the biggest city near them. And the market areas, the distributors would actually take that wine and they'd send it out to the restaurants for the most part. But then as industry started there, the distributors started blending or making the wines and making them for shipping out of the country. And so what ended up happening was these little producers they weren't producing their own labels. They were all randomly seen by the distributors, and they'd randomly put on the labels the name of the small area that they're from, or the grape, or it all is still very, very random as to how a wine label is produced in Italy. And so it's very confusing to know what's in the bottle when you're buying it. And so that's one of the reasons that the Italian industry is so hard the wine industry is so hard to understand. It's really hard to teach and not like be looking at you guys in class, because I love seeing your faces and watching the registration of, I don't understand what she's talking about or whatever, but anyway, we're doing the best we can. So I wanted to, there was a couple, oh yeah. The other thing about Italian wineries, for some reason, this one's a little different actually. They actually have a lot of information on their back label, but most Italian wineries have very little. This is a much more normal Italian winery back label. And so where we might have gotten more information on the back label, if we didn't get it on the front, this has hardly anything more than the front does. So it's very hard to find information. So it's we do the best we can and continue to learn and know that we'll never probably ever get it really clear. So let's start with our white wine. We're in the northwestern corner. You have your map. If you have it handy, it's this map right here. This is the map of that northwestern corner at the top of Italy there. And we are talking about the grape Principessa Gavia, and it is Gavi, which is the name of the little area, not the grape, name of the little area. And then under it, it has DOCG, Banfi. So Banfi is the producer of this. And Principessa Gavia is the brand name, and Gavi is where it is made, and DOCG is the quality level. And we'll talk about that in a second. It was mentioned on your handout as well. So that's what's on this label. Gavi, if you have your map, Gavi is the area that is in, it's a very small green, light green, can you, let's see, can you even see that? There. A very small light green area at the, almost the right side of that map is called Gavi. And they produce this wine that you're drinking out of the Cortese grape, the Cortese grape. And they are a very light-skinned grape, and this is really, I don't know, can anybody put your hand up if you've ever seen a Gavi, or excuse me, a Cortese grape from anywhere else in the world? Has anybody ever seen that? See about any other hands up? No, so this is the only place that I've ever seen the Cortese grape. And so this is a really special grape, and it's so nice that they kept this in the region when many of the wine regions in the world, as the Frenchification of the world happened in the early 1900s, mid 1900s, a lot of winemakers and grape growers pulled out existing natural local grapes and were putting in the French varietals that are the popular ones. And we might have lost this if the local grape growers weren't so in support of it. So it is, as you, has everybody got this? Well, I think Penny's got water, but when I didn't have the wine open when I was preparing the tasting notes. So when I do that, and I do it from the winemaker's perspective, because oftentimes I'm teaching classes where I haven't had the notes yet. I haven't had the taste of the wine yet, and so I'm having to use the winemaker's experience and what the winemaker is wanting us to find. So that's how I got these sight, sip, and savor. Sight, scent, sip, and savor. So let's go through the 5 S's for those of you who haven't maybe been in a Fox School of Wine class as we start to taste this wine. So there are 5 S's that we talk about. The first S is sight. So you're looking at the wine, and preferably you want to look at the wine in a way that is consistent for your brain. So either you use a white piece of paper, you tip it away from you, and you look at the paper through the glass, through the wine. So I'm looking down through the wine at the paper. Now, if you don't have a white piece of paper, if you're not doing a lot of wine tasting, you might not have white paper around. Some people will use their palm, and they will use the palm and they'll look at their palm through the wine. And because you'll always have your palm with you, and you'll be able to use that and see if you can see the lines in your hand and see if it discolors your palm a lot. In this case, it's very hard to see any difference in my palm. The white of this on the paper, on a white paper, I can see that it looks a little bit, they call it pale straw yellow. For me in my glass, I'm seeing it as a little bit warmer than just a pale straw yellow. I'm seeing it a little bit warmer than that, a little bit more of the yellow or the orangey kind of in it. So that's our sight, first S, sight. Second S, scent, swirl. Gosh, it's been a while since I taught a class. So you want to swirl your wine, and you can either put it on the table in front of you, or you can hold it up and swirl it. You want to lift the molecules into the round shape of the glass. Third S is sniff, scent, smell. So you really want to get your nose close to that wine. And so the winemaker called out, and I'm so surprised, and I get it out of this, and I'd love to see hands up if you guys get this. The pineapple in this is really strong to me. And then it's got this back edge of the green apple that the winemaker mentioned. And Penny, please do unmute yourself if we have any conversations that are going on or questions that you think would be pertinent right now. I just realized that keeping you guys quiet I mean, not answering questions the whole time is maybe a disservice. So will you please let me know if there's anything?
Yeah, we have a great question from Shara actually. And she was asking if there's an American equivalent or a French equivalent to the DOCG.
No, that is a great question, Shara. There is not. So, the United States really doesn't have a rating system that is comparable to either the French system, AOC, AOP, or the DOC, DOG system in Italy. The United States goes only by designated area. They don't have any rules about yield. And correct, if anybody has any other information, I don't think there's an area in the United States that has any yield requirements, when they have to pick their grapes. It's all very regulated in France and Italy, not so much here. Now the difference in France and Italy's systems, France is AOC or AOP, depending on if you're using the new terminology. And that is a designation that does talk about area. It also talks about, like I said, yield. You're only allowed to say have, you know, a number of hectares are supposed to give you a yield of X number of X volume of wine or grape juice out of that area. Also, they'll talk about when you pick the grapes, those kinds of parameters. I can't think of anything else off the top of my head like that. But then if you look over at Italy, they tried to use a similar system, and that started with DOC. DOC is very similar to AOC and AOP out of France. DOC is that basic qualification. DOCG, wait a second. No, Penny, can you think of any? No, AOCG, there's actually a tasting panel of experts, and they actually not only say this winery followed all these rules, they actually taste it and they say this is finest of this area. And so the Gavi region, if you've produced a wine from the Gavi region, the area, the governing board of the area has actually tasted it and said, this is qualified for putting the DOCG label on that wine. I don't think there's anything like that in France. Can you think of something like Grand? The only thing I'm thinking is the leveling system in each region of like Grand Cru, Premier Cru, you know, Chablis, and then Petit Chablis. So there is there is that. So Shara, that would be a good comparison. Thinking through that, the DOC, it's similar in the sense that some of France's regions have their own rating system of better, you know, best, better, good, and okay. So I guess that would be, yeah, that would be qualified for that. So good question. And let Penny know, and you can re-ask me, Penny, if I don't answer the question thoroughly, please. Okay, so this Gavi and the Cortese grape, it basically started to become popular in the 80s. And it was one of the first wines that we saw in the United States, mostly in the East Coast and the New York area, that came over. Pinot Grigio as well came over as well. And these were dry, they were light, and they were easy for the American public to drink. And this is a huge thing about imported wines. This is easy to order on a wine list. when you see the word Gavi, you can kind of think, I bet I can pronounce that. Where some of these other types of wines on wine lists are so overwhelming that you feel embarrassed to order it, or you might just order by the number or something. So Gavi was easy to order. And once people learned how to drop the T of the Pinot Grigio, they were ordering that. Okay, so we've had a taste of this. We found in your information that I sent over, we found out why it's named Gavi and in this area, or one of the stories as to why it was named Gavi. So anybody else, if you'll raise your hand, anybody else have a food and wine pairing? I've used it over the last 3 or 4 days with a few of my lighter dishes and such, but the Indian food, it went beautifully with. In fact, I think it was it Joel? Did you do this with or might have been Dave Piccoli? They'd done it. It was Dave Piccoli. They did it with a pasta with an green olive sauce that he said it didn't go very well. They didn't like it very much. If anybody wants to raise your hand, we can unmute you and you can tell us what you paired it with. If anybody has an experience. Brooke, I'm gonna go unmute you there. Did I do that? There.
Hi, kind of similar to yours. We did green curry chicken with like the coconut milk, but it was a little spicy and had the coconut. Mm-hmm.
And it worked for you guys?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
It stood up, so you got a little bit of an experience both with the wine and the food?
Yeah, I mean, the things that you all suggested, I can have dairy, so I was trying to figure out like what else I could eat that would have garlic and like cream. So we made Thai curry. Yeah.
Perfect. Anybody else? Oh, okay.
Sure.
So we've got
Shara and her partner have.
Okay, Cheryl, will you unmute yourself there? It's better than me unmuting you, and tell us what you ate.
We had roasted pork, and we had it with both wines, and the white actually stood out better than the red with the pork.
What did you do to the pork?
We bought it from Tupelo.
So what was the way of preparation? What did they do to it?
It seems like it was slow roasted, almost barbecued, and then we finished it with the sweet sauce in the oven.
Oh, okay. Well, great. Well, thank you for telling us that. And that's very interesting that the white went better. Did you feel like you had, do you have a reason maybe why, was the white standing up to it and the red wasn't, or was it just that was your palates, you liked it better?
The white stood up to it. The red really just blended into the background.
Ah, yeah, and you don't want that. We want to be able to taste both the wine and the food and enjoy them together. So great. Well, thanks, guys. Appreciate it. And let's see. I think Mike and Karen, you guys had some food as well, or at least I saw someone wave. Did someone wave a hand or no?
Yeah, sorry. I was trying to get us off mute. Yes, we just enjoyed a smoked Cornish game hen just before we got on the call, and it went really well. Yes. The wine was good with the chicken and vice versa, I guess you'd say.
Great. How did that smoke? How did the smoke affect? I've never had a smoked Cornish game hen. How did that smoke? It worked well for when you were, and this was the Gavi you were using with it.
We didn't try the red.
Okay.
The greenish hen with the white.
Great. Well, thanks, guys. Okay. Thank you, guys. Okay, so I am wrapping up the white here. I don't have anything else. about this, about the white. Really, so much of Piedmont is about the reds. There are other great, let me explain a little bit about the other whites that are grown in the area, just because that's also good to know. So Moscato d'Asti, we all have heard of that. That is from this Piedmont region and is right in the middle. If you look at your map, it's that green right in the middle, and that is the Moscato grape. And they do that light, fizzy, bubbly wine that it is usually about 5% alcohol, Moscato d'Asti. They also do the Arnase grape up in this area, which is another white. And that is coming on strong in the United States. We're starting to see quite a few versions of that at the liquor store. And I decided to go with the Gavi because I've always loved it, but maybe we'll do the Arnase the next time. And it's a soft, it's another softer white wine that's very aromatic, that Arnase. It's beautiful. So those are the other two really famous whites from the area. So let's wrap up the white. And Penny, will you let us know if there's any questions that I should pay attention to here?
No questions. Brooke mentioned hers smelled like she was smelling candy on the nose, sweet tarts in particular, and wondered if anybody else was getting that.
That's awesome. When I smell it, I am getting that pineapple, which is a similar scent to me that a sweet tart. So it makes sense that we're both getting that. Yeah, so yum. Okay. On to the next wine. Red wine, Italy. Holy smokes. We could go on for days. I will tell you that if you guys, the fact that you guys are on this call and you care about Italian red wine, it is such a small percentage of many of the wine lovers from the US, because red wine from Italy tends to be much higher in acid and much lower in viscosity. And because so many of the wines that we have in the US are produced in California and in warmer regions, we are used to a lot higher viscosity, which comes with the higher alcohol. So it's got a much more viscous mouthfeel. Plus, because so many of the wines that we get from the California region that we're close to here, and certainly it's the most prolific area of the US that produces wine, the regions that are growing it are often warmer than regions in Italy, France, Spain. So we end up with, when warm regions are producing wine, the grapes in those regions, even the same grape grown in Italy versus grown in, say, Central Coast California, or even in Napa, that same grape, it's going to be warmer in California for the most part. And so it's going to have riper characteristics in it, in the grape itself, riper because it's gotten warmer. That grape has gotten sweeter. And because then it's gotten sweeter, when it's squeezed, the juice that comes out is sweeter. And therefore the yeast go in to eat the sugar to make the wine. And when the yeast are eating the sugar, they are producing carbon dioxide and alcohol. And so if there's more sugar in there for the yeast to eat, then the carbon dioxide's flying off because we're not trapping it. This isn't sparkling wine, but the alcohol percentages go up. And when it's a higher alcohol percentage, it will be more viscous in your mouth. If you look at the casual wine drinker in the US, they are, that is the profile of what they're looking for. They want a big alcohol kind of feel in their mouth, the viscosity, and they want those ripe black fruits and pruny kind of things that are going on in some of our warmer regions. Now, Italian red wines are so beautiful, but they take a nuance. They take an approach that's different than the normal casual wine lover in the US. And so the fact that you guys are, are doing this is really amazing. And the fact that I know some of you are already Italian wine lovers, it takes an effort at the beginning. So why? What's the big deal? So number one, they are cooler in general. They're cooler regions, except for the really far south ones on the islands and in the toe of the boot. Those are much warmer regions. But for the most part, these are mountainous areas in Italy, and they are cooler. And so what happens is those grapes, no matter which grape it is, it just doesn't get to the ripeness that we see in California or in other warm regions. Australia has a lot of warm regions as well. And what happens then is this wine, it is much less dense. It's much more high acid. And so the acidity is what makes it so beautiful with the foods. And Italians and the French alike, and really all of the Europeans, Spanish wines as well, they're made to go with food. These are hundreds and hundreds of years old, these wine regions. And when you think about a European, and you guys, if you have them open, go ahead and start sipping them. I haven't had a sip yet, but I will in a second. But when you think about being a farmer in the 1800s in Italy, and you are growing your crops, and you are trying to grow your green peppers and your onions, and you're trying to make sure that you've got all of these different produce types that you need, and then you're growing your grapes so that you're guaranteed of having wine in your house as well. Well, if you are being very careful with what you're doing, you want those grapes to stay high in acid, because if they get too ripe and sweet, then your tomato-y based stuff isn't going to go with it, your tomato-based foods. Maybe the truffles in the area aren't going to go with it because you've allowed those grapes to get too ripe. And so most of the wines in Italy are going to come off as a less dense, a more watery red than we see generally in the US. So that's my soapbox about Italian wines. But here we are with our Nebbiolo. And when I see an Italian wine, for the most part, when it's red, I will notice almost every time the orange tint of the wine. So as we look at, let's do the 5 S's. So the first S is sight. So we're going to look at preferably a white piece of paper, and you're going to tip it away from you and look down at the paper through the wine. And I definitely see an orangier tint to this. And I see this in Chianti Classicos. I see this in almost every wine from Italy. I don't know what it is about the soil there, but those grapes are almost always, they produce almost always an orangier tinted wine. So this to me is like a beautiful garnet, but it is, I'm able to read through it. So it's actually a very lightly pigmented wine, which I find so interesting. So let's take okay, so then second S is swirl. So you're gonna swirl that, lift the aroma molecules into the glass. Third S is smell, sniff, scent. Okay, now Penny was in this region recently, and I'm going to put her on the spot and ask her a question, because one of the things when I have mushrooms in a dish, I often go to a Nebbiolo or a Barbaresco and such. And maybe you could give us just a titch about your experience in Italy, Penny, with the truffles there. you don't
Yes,
mind.
so I was right in that region during truffle season, luckily, and they were having the truffle festival. So basically, it goes on for several weekends, but the weekend I was there, it was just 2 days of everything you could imagine paired with truffles, and all we drank was Nebbiolo and Barbera, and yeah, we had a live cooking demonstration, and they came around. You would raise your paddle, and they would shave truffles on your dish, and if you wanted more, you'd raise your paddle again, and they kept track of your number like at an auction, and then they'd run over with their little credit card machine, and you'd pay for your truffle shavings, and then the next dish would come out, and they'd do the same thing. If you wanted truffles on it, you'd raise your paddle, and yeah, it was pasta, eggs, salad, soup. We had truffles on everything, pizza. Yeah.
Did you find, you mentioned Barbera, which I'll mention in a second too, but Barbera, did you find one of the wines that you ended up loving more as a general wine, type with the truffle?
Well, I'm a casual girl, as you know. I love Dolcetto because I think that wine just goes with everything. I think it goes with pizza, pasta, soup, anything, nothing, bread. I love Dolcetto, and it is kind of their everyday wine there in that region. So.
Awesome. Well, that's great. Okay, so thank you for mentioning these other two grapes. So Nebbiolo is the famous one from the region. Nebbiolo is the famous grape. And then Barbera, is a close second. Dolcetto, as you said, has been the one that has been kind of the little baby brother that doesn't get a lot of attention. But an interesting, Dolcetto means little sweet one, and it is not a small wine. I mean, it's a pretty good sized wine with a lot of strength. And so I always think of that. What's that?
Rustic is what they call it.
Rustic. It's, yeah. It's someone with a little bit of dust on their boots, right? Right. Yeah. So the Dolcetto grape, I love that. So anyway, we are looking at Nebbiolo, and I've always loved Nebbiolo for the reason that I put in the handout, which was the fact that it appears to be such a light, almost Pinot Noir-like wine, a very light, thin wine. And then when you drink it, it has all of this tannin in your mouth that is unexpected with such a feminine looking wine in the glass. So I'll take another sip here, and maybe if you guys want to take a sip and analyze the tannins, that grippy compound in your mouth. So like my tongue is sticking to the top of the roof of the roof of my mouth right now, because the tannins are very strong in this. And what I love about this wine, and I know someone's drinking, that someone else said that I think they had Vieri. So it's a similar wine. What I like about Nebbiolo from Langhe is that it is much more approachable to drink. It's a Nebbiolo, but it's more easy to drink younger. Barolo and Barbaresco. Now, I don't know how well, Penny, you'll have to tell me at our next seminar if this is a good, if it's a good use of time. But you might see that the Alba area is surrounded to the left and the right by Barolo and Barbaresco. And so the Alba area is orange, and both Barolo and Barbaresco are to the sides of it. Barolo and Barbaresco are Nebbiolo as well, but they are, they have been categorized, their vineyards have been categorized based on exposure, based on soil types at a higher level than plain Nebbiolo out of Langhe. But what they're producing, Barolos and Barbarescos, they are so tannic that it takes some 15 years to have the tannins soften enough to enjoy the wine like we're doing tonight. This is a much more approachable wine earlier on, and it still has that pretty strong grip of tannins, but it's not like it's just overwhelming us and we can't appreciate any of the other subtle flavors and such in this. Because I always, when I stick a nose into Nebbiolo, I get a mushroomy smell. Now, it's funny how we all have our own smells and our own patterns and our own history. So we take it in only via our brain that's only smelled that one way before. Or so it's, you know, I might smell mushrooms, someone else might smell leather, someone else might smell dirt. It's our, and some people talk about tar in Nebbiolo, the tar smell, and I think that what I'm taking in as mushroom.
Mike and Karen had a question about the wine in Italy, and I answered it, but I wanted to put it to you as well. They asked if they serve their reds chilled. And I said, in general, I think other countries always serve their reds cooler and their whites warmer than we do in the States. But what is the proper serving temperature for?
You're absolutely right. Absolutely right, Penny. So proper temperatures, and that's a big deal because it can ruin a wine if it's at the wrong temperature. And you're absolutely right. Europeans, they've been doing this for a lot longer than we have, and they will serve their red wines in the low 60s, 60 to 65. So we consider that slightly chilled because 70 probably is a normal house temperature here. So 62, 65 is the right temperature for a red wine. As the lighter the wine, the lighter the red, the more you can go down in temperature a little bit. That's how, like, for example, Beaujolais out of France is a light red wine, and you can chill that down to maybe into the mid 40s. And it's great. So what you have to think about is as you chill a red wine, the perceivable tannins will be bigger. So the colder the red wine, the more you're going to feel the tannins in your mouth. So a Nebbiolo is probably not a good one to chill because you're going to accentuate even an already tannic wine. So that's reds. And then whites, yes, Penny, you're right. We usually serve our whites straight out of the fridge here. And that's too cold. Our refrigerators are usually just about, 35, 38 degrees or so. And it's way too cold for a white wine. What that is like doing is if you chill your wines too much, your whites, it's like, I'm sure you guys, the experience of having, when you're sitting at a restaurant, when we used to be able to sit at restaurants, and they bring you the food and they put it in front of you, and the smells waft up at you, and everything starts getting excited to eat because these smells are coming up at you, right? Well, if you chill your white wine too much, it would be like putting saran wrap, plastic wrap over a beautiful meal. That is what you are doing when you over chill your whites. So because it's like putting, literally you've tamped down the aroma molecules and they're not coming off the wine into the glass. So what I always do is to serve my whites, I take them out of the refrigerator about 20 minutes before I serve them. And in regards to the wet reds, I put them into the refrigerator 20 minutes before I'm going to serve it. So it chills the red down a titch and it warms the whites up a bit. And so that's the way I do service for that. And that's a very well-known thing to do. How are we doing on questions?
Well, we've had some funny comments. Joel said the cheaper the white, the colder he serves it because it hides
Oh,
the
that's
flaws.
brilliant.
And then Renee said, so no ice cubes, ha ha ha. And Joel said $2 shard. That's where you put the ice cubes in.
Yes, yes. And these days, since we all are making do with things, it is, there might be some cheaper alcohol to walk into your house. So
Yeah.
yes, like I said, it was fun to be able to open these wines. So back to the Nebbiolo. So we've talked about mushrooms. Nebbiolos are usually very good with mushrooms. They are a lighter style than you would expect based on what on the tannin. So you get this interesting dichotomy. It's like a Pinot Noir with just grippy tannins. And Pinot Noir is usually something that you would pair with something that doesn't have a lot of fat in it, because I always say fat and tannin are friends. So and they're holding hands. So when the fat in the dish goes up, the tannin needs to go up because they're holding hands, and it would be hard to hold hands if one's like this. You want them to stay even. If the fat is low in a dish, you want the tannins low. And so what Nebbiolo is this bizarre, more light-bodied type of wine with a heavy tannic presence. And so what you want to do is you want to pair it with something that has fat in it, because the tannin and fat are friends, right? So you don't want to, I wouldn't throw this, like, you know what? I wouldn't throw this in with a baked chicken with just a baked breast of chicken. It wouldn't have enough fat to coat your tongue. And I'll just start with that so quickly. How am I doing? Oh my goodness. Okay. So here is a piece of wood, pretend. It's just a piece of wood here. And we paint the wood with paint in order to seal up the pores in the wood. And the only way we can get back to the pores in the wood is to sand off the paint off the wood. And your tongue is the same way. So picture this now as your tongue. The fat will come in through the dish, you know, and it coats your tongue. The fat lays on your taste buds. Your taste buds are technically gummed up at that point. There is fat sitting on top of your taste buds. So what you want is you want to take a sip of wine, because that wine comes in and acts like sandpaper, and it basically sands off your taste buds so that then the next bite you taste better. It's not as gummed up anymore. So what I would say is you always want a dish with Nebbiolo that has some fat in it, because otherwise those tannins are going to go into your tongue and they're not necessarily having a job to do, and therefore they kind of they will detract from that experience if you don't have some fat in there for it to kind of sand off. And then you start tasting the secondary flavors of the plum and maybe the tar, the mushrooms, and that kind of thing. You won't taste that if it's just all tannin in your mouth, unless you're a very good taster, which some of you I know are. So, okay, so let me see. We covered the Barbera, we covered the Dolcetto. I am about finished here with the second wine. Are there questions that we should go over?
Not in the chat, but I think people should unmute and ask any questions.
Okay, so I'm going to unmute, excuse me, unmute yourself when you're ready to ask a question. All right, I think that might be a wrap then.
Oh wait, we have a question, it looks like.
So early on in wine tasting experience, often you get the suggestion that a wine must have good legs on the glass, which I think is the same as viscosity and high tannins. So is that a myth or is that an Americanism? What's going on with that?
I have to tell you, and what is your name? I know Cher is on the call, but what's your name?
Gary.
Hi, Gary. That's a great question, Gary. And I can't even tell you how many times I get that question because everyone they've seen movies, you know, where the people are standing around in the library and they're like, oh, the legs are beautiful in this, you know. It is a myth in terms of the quality of any wine. You cannot tell anything about the quality of the wine by the legs on the glass. And you are absolutely right. The legs have to do with the viscosity in the wine, which has to do with the alcohol content. So you are getting information to your brain. It doesn't actually have to do with tannin. So you mentioned alcohol and tannin, and those actually are separate. High alcohol and low tannin will give you still very viscous legs, and they will be slow to fall and they will be thick. And those are, I'm seeing them here, but not a lot. These are actually pretty thin tiers. The alcohol content on this, like
13%.
what is it?
14%.
14. So a little higher than I would have expected, but part of that also might be due to soap on the glasses. But it has nothing to do with quality. But when you are circling a glass like this, looking at the how it's very translucent, this wine, and you're circling the glass, you're going, wow, that's a higher alcohol wine with a very translucent experience that I'm looking at. You might start filing that away as information that this is an unusual wine, because most high alcohol wines are going to have more, they're going to be more opaque. They're going to be like a Zinfandel that you can't see through. They're dark, and you swirl them and it's like syrup coming down the side of the glass, right? So great question. Did I answer your question enough?
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Good question. Anybody else?
Wondering what the threshold is on alcohol. Is anything over what percentage is considered high?
So most dry table wines are in the 12.5 to 13.5, 14 range. Anything over 14 I would consider a high alcohol wine. And we see Zinfandels get up to 15.5. Now, winemakers and labeling is a very interesting thing here, because, and I'm talking extemporaneously about this from memory, but when you are labeling your wine, oh, look at this little friend. Yay, it's a pet at wine tasting. Great. Oh gosh. So goodness, I was talking about high alcohol, but in the labeling, when the winemaker decides as to what to put on the label, they have a 1.5% latitude in their alcohol percentage. 1.5%. So they can be 1.5% off and still put that number on the label. If you see a 12.5 or a 13, you will know it's got a 1.5% chance of being higher or lower than that, or within that range. Now, if you see a wine that has no, this is 12.5. So if you see one that has like 12.3 or 13.2, that is the alcohol percentage of that wine, and they are calling it out specifically for a reason, and they are saying that purposefully so that you know exactly what that wine is in terms of the alcohol percentage. Otherwise, if it's an even number, take it with a grain of salt. So great question. Yeah. I love Cher. That dog is so cute. Well, guys, thank you so much cheers to our first sip with a Somm. And I look forward, you guys have been so supportive and so patient through all of this rigmarole. And I'm looking forward to next week. We've got 2 great wines. Oh, I should have brought them up. 2 great wines. We have a Chardonnay from Vos Felix. It is beautiful. And this is from the Margre. Oh, oh, that's Diesel, the Bernese Mountain Dog. Oh, that dog is huge.
He had to
beautiful.
be lifted by Eric to get him in the picture.
Love it.
Oh, wait, he's coming back.
Oh, okay. Diesel's come. Oh. Oh gosh. Yes. Perfect.
Sorry.
No, I love it. Oh, I love the fact that we've got our dogs here. And cats, whoever's fish. I don't care. Anyway, Margaret River is a very cool region on the west coast of Australia, and we've got 2 wines from there next time. One is a Chardonnay from Vos Felix, which is one of their most renowned producers in the Margaret River area, and we have Ringbolt Cabernet Sauvignon from the. And so I want you guys to think about and prepare and see if you go ahead and taste these wines before our class next Sunday. I want you to think about whether in this cooler region, I want you to get ahead of what you think the wine will taste like compared to other Chardonnays and other Cabernets you've had, and see if that, if you get ahead of that and it follows your expectation based on the fact that this is going to be a cooler region in Australia. Okay. And did I see any other questions come in? Are we ready to wrap up, Penny?
I think we're ready. Sean held up the bottles for us briefly so everybody could see the labels we were looking at.
Okay, let's see. Sean, will you talk so we can see your picture?
He's still, are they muted?
Yeah, first of all, we're sorry that we're so dark over here. We're kind of experimenting with the location of the camera here. So we feel very sinister. We're not really trying to be, anonymous or sinister or anything, but we are going to try the wine tonight with chicken and mushrooms. So we will report back with the Nebbiolo.
Perfect. Did you show the 2 wines for next week? Do you have those handy? Will you mind holding those up?
Yeah, here we go.
You got a sommelier there?
Yes. There we go.
Perfect.
Those are for next week.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Sure.
All right. Well, so happy to have you all here. Cheers to the first sip with a Somm, and we'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.